Welcome to the world of probiotic foods. This is Cultured Food Life with your host, Donna Schwenk.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's show. I want to talk about something that is really the reason I started consuming cultured foods. And it was started back for me in 2001, and I was battling high blood pressure, hypertension, and diabetes. And it was during that period in my life that I began to drink kefir. And through a series of events, I'd had a baby. I was 41 years old, and I'd had a baby, and high blood pressure and diabetes ran in my family, in every side of my family. And it was something that a lot of my close family members were medicated for, and my dad and mom and everybody seemed to struggle with it. And it was something that I was concerned about. Even as a younger person, I always seemed to struggle with it. And I noticed an interesting occurrence. I had mild hypertension, and then I had severe hypertension when I had my child, and then that kind of didn't go away. And I started to drink kefir. And I noticed, and I actually drank kefir to help my infant. I gave it to her. She was born prematurely because of me, because I was so sick. My blood pressure was so high, but my liver was shutting down. And I had a lot of things that were going on with my pregnancy, so they delivered her 8 weeks early, which caused her to be premature, and she was only 3 pounds. And so I started looking for things to help her, and which is really a very common occurrence for mothers. They look to help their children, and what happened was that it wound up helping me. And I started ingesting kefir every day, and it was very surprising to me, but I noticed that my blood pressure was going down. And not just a little, but quite a bit. It would put me in the normal range. And then when I would stop drinking it, stop having kefir every day, my blood pressure would start to creep up, and it would take about a couple of days, 2-3 days, and it would start to go back to what it was previously. So I started to do experiments on myself to see if it really was the kefir that was lowering my blood pressure. And after many, many times of kind of trial runs, I was convinced it was the kefir. And I never really wanted to just accept something without knowing the reasoning behind it. I love science. I love understanding things. And so I began searching for answers. And there wasn't a lot out there at the time, because this was many years ago. But I did start to find some things that really helped explain to me what was happening to me. And after drinking kefir for a couple of months and having my blood pressure normalize, I stumbled upon a book that I was reading because I was trying to find answers, and it was called Bacteria for Breakfast. And it described that fermented milk products, how they lowered blood pressure in people with mild hypertension. And to combat hypertension, doctors often prescribe, you probably know them as ACE inhibitor drugs. And this helps decrease the tension in blood vessels, and thus it decreases your blood pressure. And what this study discussed in Bacteria for Breakfast, and it was a book, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned that, what they found is that some strains of the probiotics in this fermented milk product produce their own ACE-inhibiting substances during the fermentation process. And ACE-inhibiting substances were abundant in kefir, is what they had found. And while most bacteria produces lactic acid bacteria, they also produce ACE-inhibiting substances during the milk fermentation part itself. And lactobacillus, and particularly Lactobacillus helveticus, which is a certain strain of bacteria, was identified as the most effective ACE-inhibiting substance. And this study indicated that it worked on an enzyme in the stomach, much like an ACE inhibitor drug would do naturally to lower your blood pressure. And another study was done in April 2018 by Auburn University, and they did a collaboration with the University of Brazil. They started to study this, and they took rats to determine how kefir reduced high blood pressure. And they classified them into 3 groups. The first group had high blood pressure and consumed kefir every day for 9 weeks. The second group also had high blood pressure but did not receive any of the kefir. The third group did not have high blood pressure and they were not given kefir. So after 9 weeks, they tested them all, and those who had received kefir had lower levels of endotoxins, lower blood pressure, and improved intestinal permeability. And this describes the way materials pass from the gastrointestinal tract through the cell lining, through the gut wall, into the rest of the body. And the consumption of kefir also restored 4 different bacteria that were not present in the gut before they consumed kefir. And the microorganisms that populate our gut have been shown to communicate with the brain. And I've done quite a few podcasts on that if you're interested in that. And it's really, really interesting how the gut and the brain work together. And they often call the gut the second brain. And kefir's effect on gut bacteria appears to reduce the levels of inflammation in the central nervous system and signals the brain to lower blood pressure to healthy levels. And according to this research, what the researchers said, and I quote, "Our data suggests that kefir has anti-hypertensive association mechanisms involved in the gut-brain axis and communication that evolves because of hypertension. It seems to communicate to one another." Another study done to investigate the effects of fermentation milk containing lactobacillus and other beneficial bacteria and good yeast too was done on blood pressure in untreated hypertensive subjects. So they had hypertension, but they weren't on medication. And it was a double-blind, placebo-controlled study. And 18 subjects who had hypertension and were not taking any medication. And then there was 26 subjects with blood pressure that was in the normal range. All of these people participated in this study. And the subjects ingested daily 95 milliliters of either fermented milk or artificially acidified milk. So it kind of made it appear like it was fermented as a placebo for 8 weeks. In the placebo subjects, both treatments did not affect any of their indexes. They measured, including blood pressure, heart rate, blood serum indexes. None of that changed. In the hypertensive patients or subjects, at 2, 4, and 8 weeks, after the beginning of the ingestion of this fermented milk, the systolic blood pressure decreased significantly by 7.5 to 9.3 mmHgs, which is a significant decrease in your blood pressure. And this has led researchers to explore more about the benefits of fermented milks and the bacteria components that change not only blood pressure, but it also changes cholesterol, markers for inflammation, and helps improve cardiovascular health. Now, how does this all work? Fermentation of milk involves breaking lactic acid bacteria down in a milk product. It can also be done in non-dairy milk, but none of that has really been studied for hypertension. So I am not sure if that works for hypertension, non-dairy milk, but I do know that regular milk does. And what it does is the bacteria breaks down milk proteins that help people, especially people who have allergies to milk proteins, and it helps them digest the milk. For instance, it breaks down lactose. And basically, the lactose is completely broken down by the bacteria because it consumes all the lactose and makes probiotics from it. So there's milk that's fermented is 99, or kefir is 99.9% lactose free. And that's kefir. Some of the other milk products like yogurt, it still has a little bit of lactose in it, not near as much, there's not as much a breakdown as there is in kefir because there's more beneficial bacteria in kefir. But most people who have lactose intolerance do fine on kefir because there's no lactose in it. Fermented milk also seems not only just to lower blood pressure, but it also has been shown to prevent cancer from growing. And I have a whole blog on that if you're interested, article and I think a podcast too. And these improvements, they're trying to figure out what it is. It might be due to the antioxidant or immune stimulating effects of these fermented products. But one of the also things that's wonderful about fermented milk products is that it increases the shelf life of any of the milk products, which is, fantastic for preservation of your food. It lasts such a long time. And hypertension, it's a disease that is not only affecting adults now, but also children worldwide. And one of the sad things that I've noticed as I've gotten older is that a lot of the diseases that adults usually had are now happening in children. And it's really sad because those things didn't happen on a regular basis until, quite recently as children became, eating less and less healthy foods, less exercise, and they've really suffered. And so now it's affecting children. And although anti-hypertension drugs play a fundamental role in blood pressure regulation, and they're one of the most prescribed drugs worldwide, they have a lot of side effects. And it can be really hard on you. I've seen that in my own family. It can be hard on you if it's not regulated properly. And I never wanted to do that. I never wanted to go on it. I wanted to find out why I had high blood pressure. Why was my body doing that? And why did it run in my family? And what were we doing that was causing the body to create, this kind of tension in the body that made my blood pressure go up? And I learned so much in trying to figure out the answers to this. And it was the very first thing that I noticed as a health benefit was that it lowered my blood pressure. That was the beginning for me with cultured foods. And I thought, if this food, I was just drinking a cup or two a day, can do this to me, and it's just food, and it's just something I have for breakfast usually. Sometimes I have it. Actually, last night I had it for dinner because I was so busy I didn't have time to eat. And I thought, if it can do this in me, what else can it do? And that's really what started me on this whole journey. Because first of all, I didn't want to take drugs. And if I could just have this every day and have it control my blood pressure and not have to take drugs, I was doing that. And that's really why I started to drink it. So I'm kind of thankful for the fact that I had that, because it really led me to go down this unbeaten path and find out just the wonders that fermented foods and probiotics and bacteria can do in the body. And I'm so grateful for that now because it changed everything for me. And I've tried to find more research about it. I'm always looking for stuff because now research is catching up with what I've known from, drinking this for 17 years. And it's really exciting to me because I've seen about 13 studies done on fermented milk on reducing blood pressure. And almost all of them have used, the bacteria that's really abundant in kefir, Lactobacillus helveticus, which is it's a large group of species in kefir, but there's also, there's 50 plus beneficial bacteria and yeast in kefir. And this one seems to be the one that they study the most, and that seems to be in all of the studies. And so I don't know when they make these fermented milks, if they're just using Lactobacillus helveticus and not the other 50 plus strands. I can't really find the information on the studies themselves. I'd have to go contact them. But I'm wondering if, in all of the studies, it lowered the blood pressure. Sometimes it wasn't very much, and sometimes it was. And I wonder if that's because of the different strains they may have used in some products versus other. And I'd have to investigate that more, because I wonder if they don't say they're using kefir in some of the studies. There's been the last two studies I just read to you but some of the other ones just called it fermented milk. And I don't know if they were manufacturing that milk with bacteria to make it that way. And so, the effects would be very different because that's only, one species of bacteria, whereas kefir naturally has 50 plus in it. But whatever the case, the biological effects have been attributed to the bioactive peptides that are encrypted within the dairy proteins that can be released during fermentation with these specific lactic acid bacteria. Or when it happens on the, when you ingest it and the gastrointestinal digestion changes as it's ingested into the body. And the most studied bioactive peptides derived from dairy proteins are the ones that they've researched for antihypertensive peptides. And it's really exciting for me to see more and more research being poured into this because there's so much there that I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg. Because I'm seeing this a lot now. For instance, I did a lot of research on like sourdough breads, and I did a lot of research into einkorn sourdough bread. And einkorn flour is the most ancient wheat, and it's what all the wheat has come from. And there's proteins in these wheats that are specific to this einkorn flour. And then when we decided when we wanted to make more wheats, we wanted a higher yield of wheat. So they started to, hybridize it with goat grasses and stuff. And when they did, they changed the proteins. And when they changed the proteins, people started having allergies to the wheat. But most people can handle, almost everybody who's a gluten intolerant can handle einkorn wheat because it hasn't been modified in any way. And I'm wondering the same with the proteins in the milk. The proteins in the milk, whether it be it, people seem to have food allergies to it, but when the process of fermentation occurs, when you transfer regular dairy milk into kefir, it completely changes the structure of the milk and the proteins are changed. And then they become bioactive and people don't seem to struggle with it like they do with regular milk. And I really think kefir is a completely different food than regular milk. And that's through the miracle of fermentation and what it does to the milk. It changes it. It increases the B vitamins. The C vitamins go up, which most of the time there's not C in milk unless it's raw, because whenever you heat milk, you kill that. Well, it puts it back into that when you ferment it. And not only that, the protein structures are changed. They're allowed for easier digestion. And I see this again and again. When I have kefir, I don't want to eat as much. I'm really nourished. And actually I was having a discussion with my son last night, and he had not been having kefir, and he goes, I've just seen such a difference. Mom, I'm hungry. I want to eat more when I don't have kefir for breakfast. I would get so stuffed. I wasn't eating very much, but when I have kefir every day. And he would also put, I have this supplement that I sell called Prebio Plus, which feeds the good bacteria in your body and in the kefir, and it makes it grow and multiply. And he said, I would have that every day in my breakfast. Either he didn't even really make a smoothie. He just poured kefir into a glass, put the prebio in it, and would put some of my granola in it or fruit or something and take it to work. And he said, when I stopped doing that, I'm twice as hungry as I was before, and I've really noticed some changes in my body. And I think it changes the way that, and he's always struggled with regular dairy. From a little boy, he couldn't handle it. It hurt his stomach, but he never struggled with kefir. And I remember, for years, I quit giving him, regular milk because it hurt his stomach. And this was way before I knew about cultured foods. And yet he seems to thrive on kefir. And I believe that's due to the way the proteins and the peptides in the milk and the bacteria is broken down and really transformed. And I really encourage you to see if it helps you. Do it for yourself. There's a lot of research out there, but research can be very difficult to understand, and it all depends on what kind of milk they did and how they fermented it and how much they gave them and, how long they fermented it. I mean, there's just so many variables that it can be. And I think your body is your best teacher. And I encourage you to try it and see for yourself. And don't take my, advice unless you know that it works for you. I've witnessed this food do so many miraculous things, and not just on hypertension, but on a myriad of ailments. And one thing I have noticed is that the bacteria that's in kefir has many transient bacteria, which means it doesn't last in the body very long. And whatever those strains are, I seem to need them. They keep me healthy, and I've witnessed it time and time again that if I don't have it on a regular basis, I struggle. So I've just been taking it for 17 years, and making it a part of my life. And it's funny, I don't really get tired of it. Like yesterday, I had it twice. I had it for breakfast and dinner because I was busy last night. I didn't have a lot of time, and I really, really wanted a smoothie bowl with, what did I make? Last night I made a non-dairy kefir. I think it was one I had left over. I had just taught a class, and so I had a bunch of non-dairy kefir left over, so I made that. And I put frozen cranberries, frozen blueberries. I mixed it together, and I put a little bit of almond milk in it. And then I topped it with bananas and I think a spoonful of nut butter. And that was my dinner. And that's really all I had. I didn't really care about anything else because it's so filling. And I did it not only because I like it, because it kind of is comfort food for me. It is comfort food for me. And I'd had it that morning, and I had it again because I wanted something fast and easy, and I wanted something that tasted good. And so not only is my blood pressure good, but I've seen this with my children. My daughter, Holly, if she doesn't have kefir all the time, she gets acne. And so now she has it all the time. And my son is noticing too that the difference is for him that if he doesn't have it every day, he struggles with certain things. And I just see it all the time. It's just something that you need to make a part of your life. It surprises me though, because it changed everything for me. It's so simple to make, guys. It's so much easier than yogurt. You're just sitting it on your counter for 24 hours. I mean, you don't have to have equipment. You just need a jar. And in 24 hours, you have kefir. And it's sustainable. It's easy to make. I love it. It can be made for anything from smoothies to dips. I make cheeses with it. I use it in so many, many different ways. And people have drank it for thousands of years. And many of these people have lived well into their hundreds. It's documented throughout history. And, I hope to do the same. I hope to live to be, a ripe old age. And if they ask me my secret, I'm going to utter one word, and that is kefir. It has made such a difference for me. It was the answer to my prayers and cries for help when I was so sick and struggling. And I really asked for help for my daughter because she was such a tiny little infant, was struggling to survive. And I went around, I really asked for help for her. And lo and behold, it healed me too. And here I am doing a podcast, and I'm trying to encourage you. But the truth of the matter is, it really doesn't matter what the science or research says. I know what it does to my body because I have lived it. I have it every day. I know the benefits, and without the benefits, I struggle. And some of my health ailments coming back. So I really don't need any more convincing because my body showed me the way. And I believe that we're all like that. I believe that we're all, what you seek is seeking you. And your answers are going to come in some form for you. And I hope that I can encourage you and help you find your way too. Because I just get so many emails about kefir and what it does to people. It kind of shocks me all the time. But many years ago, in 2001, I'm so thankful that I had high blood pressure and diabetes. Because without those two diseases, I would have never found this magical food that has changed my life in just so many more ways than I can even tell you. Not just my health. It became a line of work for me. It became something that I shared with my friends and family, and I watched people get better. And I think that deep within all of us is a desire to help one another. And I didn't even know that was there for me in this way. I never knew I would ever want to be an author because I didn't even like writing. But here I am talking to you in my home and sharing from you with my heart. I love this food. It changed my whole life, every aspect of my life. And it continues to do so. And I watch it change the people around me. And I really, really hope that it can change you too. Thanks, guys, always for listening. It's a pleasure to share with you from my heart. And I hope that you'll drop me a line sometime and tell me how kefir has changed you. It means the world to me. Have a great week, everybody.